Well, we still haven't heard from the premier football program in the Big Ten on what's happening with expansion. What does Ohio State think about the addition of USC and UCLA and what it means for their dominance in the conference? Plus, divisions may be gone soon in the Big Ten, so what's coming next? Could it be pods? And if so, what pods do we want to see?
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Locked On Big Ten, Jay Stevens, Nate Dickinson here with you. We're talking about the Buckeyes' perspective from things here as this realignment issue is still very active. And this is the first time we've talked to Jay about it since the news broke. So Jay, just as Ohio State here, there's implications for everyone in this conference, of course, but there's only one football team that is consistently contending for the college football playoff year in and year out. It's your Ohio State Buckeyes. What is your initial take, or I guess 2 weeks in now, take on USC and UCLA coming into this conference?
I think it helps the Buckeyes. I think it's big for the Big Ten as a whole, and the Big Ten getting two schools, a brand in USC, which is one of the biggest brands in the sport, and then UCLA, which isn't something just to laugh at either. And so you get two big brands coming to your conference, which is boosting you up. And with the thought that expansion is going to happen to the playoff, you're going to probably get more teams into the playoff than you probably would have if you would have stayed at the 14 teams that are currently in the conference. From the Ohio State side of it, I think it helps Ohio State. You're not only looked at as a team that's playing Penn State, Michigan State, but then if you're not playing Wisconsin or Iowa, you really have a cakewalk throughout the entire Big Ten regular season. Going out to LA will ultimately help Ohio State recruiting. Well, Ohio State still can recruit guys from that side of the country, especially Southern California. You're still going to be able to go out there, and then you're going to have recruits that live there, not have to travel to Columbus. They can literally go to the game and see you there at the LA Coliseum or in the Rose Bowl Stadium and watch you play those games. So it's a good move for Ohio State, and it's a beneficial one for them. It's also it brings more competition to the schedule, helps them in recruiting, but ultimately it does help the overall health of the Big Ten on the football side of things.
Well, one of the first thoughts that I had gone to was recruiting, and not that it would hurt Ohio State. Ohio State will do fine, but that you're bringing in two schools here, particularly USC, who might be able to compete with the Buckeyes on that recruiting trail if things turn around, at least for them, and go back up. But it hasn't been that way before. There hasn't really been a team out there who's been able to recruit consistently with Ohio State year in and year out. Do you feel like a USC could be that school?
Yeah, I mean, USC is one of the rare schools in the country that doesn't have to get out of their state to go ahead and recruit elite talent. You have teams down, I know Georgia's one of them, South Florida, Miami can, but it's really rare to find a school that doesn't have to go outside of, even outside of like their geographical region, a 2-hour, 3-hour drive where they currently are to recruit guys. USC is one of them. And so from the recruiting aspect of things, it's going to make things tougher for the Buckeyes, because now USC might venture into the Midwest, into the state of Ohio, and say, well, we weren't going there before. How about we try and do things now, recruit guys over here? Ohio State really has the state of Ohio on lock, but now it adds more competition for the Buckeyes in the state of Ohio, because USC is like, well, we can get elite skill guys. Well, we can get good linebackers. What about some linemen that are in the state of Ohio? Let's get them as well. And so I think it's beneficial for actually both sides. But I think overall, it's a great thing for the Buckeyes, who have been able to recruit guys out there in that part of the country. It just allows them to go out there and recruit more guys in that area, especially the state of California, which produces a lot of elite talent every single year.
What about on the football field, Jay? What kind of threat do you feel like these two programs pose to the Ohio State dominance?
Well, Nate, I recently went and looked up the series history between USC and Ohio State and UCLA and Ohio State. USC, I believe, wins. They're currently ahead in the series history, 13-10-1. I believe that the UCLA series is tied for 4-1. The Buckeyes have not played the Trojans since I think 2017 was in a bowl game. Prior to that, I believe was in 2009. They had a home-and-home series in 08 and 09. When the Buckeyes went out to LA Coliseum, I watched like a 1 hour condensed version of that game just literally yesterday, and it was no contest. It was really Brian Cushing on the defense for USC, Joe McKnight in the backfield, Mark Sanchez, a quarterback. USC just ran right over them. I think in the fourth quarter, at one point it was like 35-3. Trojans just went and rolled over them. And so on the football field, you may say, Jay, well, USC is trash. USC is a good football team, and they are historically beat the Buckeyes. There was a stretch in the Rose Bowl, I believe in the 70s. They played 4 or 5 times in an 8-year span. And the Trojans really held their own. That was kind of the end-of-year celebration. Winner of the Big Ten, winner of the Pac-10, went to play in the Rose Bowl. Buckeyes and Trojans had that kind of head-to-head matchup. People look at USC nowadays and say, well, they're not good. But for some reason, when they play the Buckeyes, they have the upper hand in those matchups, except for the most recent one. Most recently, they weren't that good at all. Weren't good at Ohio State's side. So I think it's going to be a whole lot tougher than many Buckeye fans think it will be. I do think that when you have Lincoln Riley out there, who is able to put together a phenomenal offense and be able to develop quarterbacks very, very quickly, I think this is going to be something hopefully we get a 10-year run of Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day head to head, if not every year, every other year. I would love that collision course. And let's just say if they don't play 1 year, they're playing the Big Ten championship, which might ultimately be in LA. I'm here for that. I'm here for those type of things. I think it's going to be tougher. I think the UCLA thing is going to be tougher as well, because UCLA is not a lower tier Big Ten program brand of football. They're not the lower 10. If you want to say in Illinois, Northwestern, Indiana, that's not UCLA. They can hold their own. And if they played in the Big Ten this year, it'll be a tougher contest for the Buckeyes and for other schools inside the Big Ten than many people think. So I think it's I welcome competition. The Buckeyes desperately need competition, more competition in the Big Ten. And so I think it's great for those